I call to order the August 19, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item of business is approval of minutes of July 8, 2019 special meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes of the July 8, 2019 special meeting as submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a comment, a request to add something. At the bottom of the page, it says Selectman Hirsch noted her disagreement with Town Council's opinion. Could you please add, based on what was written in past minutes from Selectmen's meetings prior to town meeting?
I'm sorry, where's the reference, Julianne?
So at the bottom of the page, the last sentence.
Bottom of the first page?
First page.
I see.
Selectman Hirsch noted her disagreement.
Second page.
It doesn't explain my disagreement. So I would like to add, please, based on what was written in past minutes from Selectmen's meetings prior to town meeting, or if you just want to write based on several reasons, and people can refer to the tape, to the video.
That's fine. Did you capture that, Diane? Okay.
Sorry?
That's fine.
Okay.
So you're
As amended.
moved as amended. Very well. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. And approval of minutes of July 15, 2019 regular meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes of the July 15, 2019 regular meeting as submitted.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Yes. It's now past the hour of 7 p.m. We have a public hearing to consider an application for a new all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license as submitted by Grafton Restaurant Group, doing business as Anzio's Brick Oven Pizza for premises located at 10010Q Shops Way. You gentlemen are here with us? Yeah, can you step up, please? Yep. Yep. And if you could just introduce yourselves and explain a little bit about your restaurant.
Sure. So Todd Harrington's my name. I own Anzio's in Grafton. We've been open for a little over 7 years. I still have a couple more years left of my lease, but we kind of outgrown the space. So we've been looking at neighboring towns because even though we wanted to stay in Grafton, there's no other properties around. I'm at Wegmans at least 5 days a week, mostly for personal.
Sure.
But so we just thought the space was great, so
Yeah.
that's why we're doing the application. And my current license is just beer and wine because we don't have a bar there, but this location has a bar, so that's why we figured trying
I
to
see.
move to the all alcohol license.
I see. Very good. Any questions from the board? Leslie?
One question, did you have to renovate, or are you planning to renovate the interior? Does the layout change?
So very little. It's gorgeous. I don't know if you were ever in
I
on until
wasn't
I wasn't
once,
until
yeah.
now, but there's very little we're going to do. We have an interior designer that's going to do some work just to kind of warm the space up a little bit because it still kind of has the Asian flair. And then we are going to put our brick oven out where the sushi bar was. So you'll be able to, when you walk in the door, you'll be actually able to see the oven, see the wood burning. So it'll be kind of interactive, and there'll be seats right there, so you can actually sit there, watch the guys making the pizza, flipping the dough, all that type of stuff. So be great for kids, hopefully.
Very nice. Thank you for relocating to Northborough.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Nice.
Tim?
I just have to, I was out with at one of my clients last week, and they told me that you guys were looking to come to Northborough, and they were beyond excited.
Oh, that's good news. Great to hear. It's a
They
great
said-
town.
They said your place in Grafton is amazing, so,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. So it's just, it was kind of cool to hear.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
you got a
Thank
couple
you.
fans out there.
Great.
How does Grafton feel about this?
There's some bitterness there a little bit. I think they understand. I mean, there's just not a lot of properties in town, and like I said, it's a good thing. We've kind of outgrown where we're at.
Yes, yeah.
And there's just so much more traffic, and it's only 3.8 miles away from our current location, so we're looking at possibly adding delivery after we open,
Right.
you know, so we can still service people in Grafton.
Excellent. Great. Any other questions? I'll just note that you're going to be the manager of record and you're tip certified.
Yep.
20 years of experience.
Yep.
Excellent. And Detective Sergeant Brian Griffin has conducted background checks and has no concerns to report at this time. So, this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard on this subject? Hearing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I move to close the public hearing. And I move the board vote to approve the application for a new alcoholic beverages restaurant license, common victular license, and entertainment license as submitted by Grafton Restaurant Group doing business as Anzio's Brick Oven Pizza for premises located at 10010 Q Shops Way, with the condition that the licensee receive satisfactory inspections by the building, fire, and health departments.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Very good. All set. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Welcome to Northborough. We look forward to the opening.
Thank you.
Yep. Now have a hearing past the hour of 7:05 to consider an application for a change in officers, directors, and manager as submitted by Wegmans, Massachusetts Incorporated, doing business as Wegmans, for their all-alcoholic beverages package store license for premises located at 9102 through 9104 Shops Way. Gentlemen? And could you introduce yourselves, please?
Matt Finewood, current store manager, Wegmans in Northborough.
My name is Rich Bosch. I'll be taking over at the store in Northborough beginning Sunday, September the 8th.
Okay, great. And could you just explain briefly the circumstances of the change of directors and manager?
Yep, so the store manager at Westwood store is actually relocating back to New York to take over our Johnson City store. So the DM asked me to go down to Westwood to run that store. So that's the change for the store manager part. For the director part, Bill Congdon, who a lot of us know, who opened the store 8 years ago, retired last year. And Kevin Russell, who actually opened the Northborough store 8 years ago, is actually relocating down to Washington to open stores down there. So I'm taking over him as the director on the liquor license.
Okay, excellent. Any questions from the board? Leslie?
No questions, just a comment. Thank you very much for your generosity.
Thank you
for
very
our
much.
community.
Thank you. It's
You're
been a
very
great being part of the
generous.
community.
Yeah, nice donations and things, and you're very involved in trying to be, a member of our community. So we appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We understand it's where our customers and our employees live. It's something very important to us, so thank you.
And I'll just note in the information we have, Mr. Boscia is tip certified.
Yes.
He's been with Wegmans since 2001, so
Yes.
a long-time employee, very familiar with the business. And likewise, Detective Sergeant Brian Griffin has done the background check, or review of the documents, I should say, and there are no concerns. Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve the application to change the officers, directors, and to change the manager as submitted by Wegmans, Massachusetts, Inc., DBA Wegmans, for their all-alcoholic package store license for premises located at 9102-9104 Shops Way.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
We appreciate it. It's now approximately the hour of 7:10, and we have Mia McDonald, Conservation Agent. Hello, Mia.
Hello.
And this is concerning the Partnership Matching Funds Award by the Department of Conservation and Recreation for the construction of a fenced dog park at the Yellock Conservation Area at 0 Hudson Street, and to request to establish a gift account for the purpose of fundraising for said dog park. So, Mia, can you let us in on the secret here?
No secret. So the Trails Committee, I'm also their staff as well as for the Conservation Commission, applied for a few projects through the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, the DCR. They have a matching funds program. Each year they allocate $1 million for capital improvements on their properties that they own, and they look for partners in the community that are willing to maintain those improvements. So to put together an application of what type of improvement it might be and to commit to maintain it in the future. The Trails Committee applied for a few projects, and they were awarded a fenced dog park at 0 Hudson Street, which is believe I put it in your packet, the Yellick Conservation Area. It's a big field there. It's already currently used by our canine population, so this would be a fenced dog area. Currently we were awarded a 1-to-1 match, and their DCR is looking for a check for $16,300. That check will be our entrance into the program, after which we'll be assigned a DCR project manager, who is a licensed professional engineer who will help with the design and the construction, bidding, permitting, because it's all on their land, so they will take over the process from there. We will just be committed to maintaining it after that.
Great, excellent. And this is a matching fund, so the actual project cost is something in the order of $32,000 to $35,000?
As of right now, so the initial project cost was designed by me, who's just a conservation agent. Once we get into the DCR program, they're going to be creating a more accurate project cost, but right now our commitment is $16,300. The program is a 1-to-1 to 2-to-1 match, so we still have some wiggle room there. If the project increases in project costs, they could increase their share of it.
Ah, I see, okay. John?
Sure, if I may, through the chair, just a little bit of background. So this isn't a new concept in this site. This isn't the first time that we've talked about this site. Several years ago, we went through a very exhaustive process. I think Tim Foster and myself almost got Lyme disease through the woods, visiting different sites for a potential dog park. We were working with a group in town that was very passionate and interested in doing this. And we exhausted all of the sites, and we couldn't find a location that met all the criteria and fit. The one site that we identified very early on in that process, and was probably the best site, is this exact location, this conservation land on Hudson Street. The issue was, at the time, DCR was not allowing dog parks on their property. And so we made multiple communications to them, had many meetings, and at the time, it was their policy not to allow this. So a couple of years ago, I had a meeting with someone from DCR when the longhorn beetle issue came up, and I had some discussions, and that individual indicated to me that their policy was changing, that they were opening up to potentially using these sites. But at the time, the folks that were interested were no longer interested, and so the project hasn't really taken off. So the benefit here, and I have to say, thank Mia McDonald for her work in putting this together. She spearheaded this, and again, I think it shows we did not have a full-time conservation agent, and Kathy Jubit is the one who was constantly saying we need additional staff to support these boards and committees. But one of the great things is that staff allows us to leverage their time towards these grant programs. So, so despite this long history, we wind up back at the parcel that we started with and identified. The difference being, not only are they now want a partner, but they're willing to bring money, bring some money to the table to make this come to fruition. In my opinion, this is as close to a no-brainer as we can get to take advantage of this program. Our intent is to conduct some fundraising. The rec department's committed to helping. We'll put some notices out. We're hoping to do some fundraising and some operating budget funds to come up with our share. And again, as we get a toehold and this project is in, down the line, there's opportunities to use some CPA funds to, if there are other improvements that need to be made, at least on the town portion of the land. But again, I think it was a great project. I think Mia and the Trails Committee, and I know myself, was a little surprised. Sometimes you submit grants and you have a pecking order. You don't always get what you want in the order that you wanted it. So there was a bridge project, which we'll revisit again. This was a secondary project that we put in there in the hopes to work down the list of things that we'd like from them. But for whatever reason, they chose it. And so I think it's going to be very well received by the community. One of the #1 requests that we get is for a dog park. And particularly with the Trails Committee, there's some conflict there, people using the trails, they're not always leashing their dogs. It's nice to be able to tell folks, if you want to have an off-leash experience with your dog in a social environment, we now have a location for you. So in terms of this evening, what we're asking for from the board is to establish a gift account that will help us reach our matching fund amount, as well as an ongoing gift account to help offset, whatever minor maintenance cost there may be. Once approved and constructed, the town will be responsible for maintaining. We've had meetings, Scott Charpentier is here. He was involved in this project as well. We need to mow, empty some trash, nothing that, we can't handle. Although he keeps telling me every time we incrementally add another property, at some point I'm gonna have to add a staff member for him. But this project would not be that tipping point for us, so it's something that, we can absorb. So all around, great program, Mia did a great job, and I think when this gets announced, well, it is announced now, I think you're gonna see a tremendous outpour of support for the project. So.
Any questions, comments from the board? Leslie?
Okay. Yeah, I can understand why this is a desired thing, especially because we do have leash laws in town. So I think this would be, a nice opportunity to have people be able to take their dogs and have them run around in there. I do recall this topic when it came up a few years ago, and I remember some issues that came up. Things like, what happens if people don't pick up after their dogs? And it happens time and time again. I guess one of my questions too was DPW would be involved with the maintenance of it. What happens if there's an unruly dog, runs around and terrorizes the other dogs or people, or, that kind of thing? And are there any liability issues at all for the town in terms of somebody getting bitten there, or a dog bites a dog, that kind of thing? I do want to make sure all these issues are covered before we approve setting up a gift account, because that implies that we are approving the project. But I do want some of these questions answered first, because I know they were important back then, and the topic kind of died after a while. But if I recall correctly, and I don't think I have my notes on it, those were some things that
Sure.
did come up.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer those. So we're not cutting any new ground here. Dog parks aren't anything new. And DCR will have their own set of rules and regulations in terms of how the park has to be run. And with regard to cleanup, so, I've spent the last 3 weekends at dog parks in other towns just to see how they operate, and informally, how they work. And I got to tell you, they're probably the most self-governing group of folks. There are no issues. The cleanup, people police themselves. Again, it's a small fence, it's fenced-in area. But the reality is it's no different than any of our other parks where we set the rules and we expect people to abide by them. If there was an issue there, if it were an emergency, police would get called, and animal control would go down there and deal with it, just as they do with any dog-related issue. But by and large, as I said, these tend to be fairly self-governing, and I wouldn't anticipate any more or less issues than anybody else has in running something like this. So, again, it seems something that's manageable, and I'm not anticipating it's going to be an overly large burden for staff.
So is it pretty much similar to the trails, kind of a hold harmless situation in terms of
Yeah, the
liability?
town wouldn't have any liability
Okay.
unless there was some negligence, a giant hole that we created and left and someone fell in it. I'm being, kind of silly here, but no, as long as things are maintained like all of our parks and our public places, there's really no increased liability for us. It is something we'll have a discussion with our insurance carrier, but again, this isn't, we're not, creating something that doesn't currently exist in many other communities. In fact, this is the trend right now. If you don't want dogs in places off leash where they ought not be, you have to create spaces, just like when you have teenagers hanging around on the corner. Well, you got to give them a place to go to hang out, to do something constructive, and this is going to be that for those folks. So.
May I also add that DCR has a great website right now. If you Google DCR and dogs, you'll find their website about their current dog parks. They have dog parks throughout the state, and their guidelines are posted there. The rules are all listed there, and they're the same rules. Well, it's their land, so we'll be using their guidelines and their rules.
And I know Mia sort of glossed over this a little bit, but one of the most attractive things for us is the fact that DCR will be the one to manage the project, to design it, to bid it, to oversee the construction. So basically, we're going to get a turnkey facility that we then need to take appropriate steps to maintain. that's very attractive, so you're not drawing staff from my office or from DPW to do a bidding on this project, and they're going to be responsible for all of that work, which is, as I said, very attractive to us. So.
Thank you, John. Julianne?
So, thank you for doing this. Apparently, it's a big wish for a lot of residents in town. And Leslie, thank you for your questions and starting this conversation. So I have a few questions, actually. Is this for Northborough residents only?
No, it will be state land.
Okay. And, oh, that's interesting.
Well, all
So,
DCR land is open to anybody, just like our, all of our trails are already currently open to anybody who would want to use it. It's not limited to Northborough residents.
and we are the only dog park in the area then?
There's one in Framingham, and then there's a few in Western Mass,
There's one in Maynard.
Maynard as well. Is that a town run or state? It's a town. I
It's a
think.
town run.
And then there's multiple towns, but as far as the DCR parks, there's the Callahan State Park in Framingham.
Right.
And then they have a few in Western Mass. I think Sturbridge is the closest, but I could be wrong.
So I'm sorry, I didn't look on the website, I didn't know about it. Is there, at certain times, is there a limit on how many dogs can be in there, or?
I believe so. I might be incorrect, but I believe you can bring all of your own dogs that you can control, that you can have safely under your control. If you're a dog walker, if you're a professional dog walker walking any amount of dogs, you're limited to 4 dogs at a time, and you have to apply for a permit. It's a simple process that I've been encouraging local dog walkers to use for the Cold Harbor site, that you register with DCR, and you're limited to 4 dogs.
Okay, and in your letter, or in your application, it says, there are very few residential abutters, but there is one who would be impacted.
There is one.
Have we reached out to that homeowner?
No, not yet. This is very new, about a week old that we were awarded this.
Oh, okay, all right, but we will, and see.
That's the plan, yes.
Okay, if there's anything we can do to, and,
If I may, there's also a significant slope. If you visited the site, there's a nice drop-off. And so that one house is on the edge of Hudson Street. If you're familiar with Hudson Street, it's not a quiet street.
Right.
Obviously, introducing dogs barking is a new level, but there is a drop-off down from the back of that house, probably about 20 feet to the dog park.
oh, the house is on Hudson Street.
The house is on Hudson Street, about 20 feet higher than the dog park. So it's not like the dogs will be in their back window.
Okay. And so the process with the money is that we're gonna put up the money and then you're going to fundraise?
Well, no, we're going to fundraise. So some combination of fundraising and operating budget funds. We have a limited amount of time to
Right.
participate in the program, so we're going to fundraise. We've had folks over the years contact us and say, listen, I'd like to donate money for a dog park to get it going, but we didn't have a location, so we never set up an account, we never went down that path. So the intent is to fundraise, and then to probably supplement that with some operational funds to get us to that figure.
Well, the letter says, please render payment in the amount of $16,300 within 30 days of receipt of this letter.
Yes.
The letter was written July 22nd, so do we have a lot of time?
We have till September 6th, and we've put in a request to get a 2-week extension, as long as it doesn't jeopardize the project. We haven't heard back yet.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, and one last question. You also applied for the bridge? Are we getting the bridge?
No, the bridge was not awarded.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But nothing precludes us from the next round to submit for that bridge. So again, grants are funny, you submit for things, sometimes you get grant funds for lower priority, what are lower priority projects for us, but it's the agency that's issuing, and they have their own criteria and their own priority list, and so sometimes they're grants. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't get exactly what you want, sometimes you don't get the exact amount you requested, and so the idea is it's a process you go through. But in this case here, I'm pretty excited about the project and confident that, we're gonna be able to make our match. And again, this is something that we've been talking about for at least 5 or 6 years. We spent the better part of a year intensively looking at options for a dog park, working with a citizen group, and we exhausted all of that. This was the only site that ever really kept coming back as a viable location, but at the time, as I said, DCR's policy wouldn't allow it. So now that's changed, and they're actually incentivizing it, and so we're able to take advantage of that.
May I also say, we already have $500. When the Friends of the Northborough Dog Park disbanded last year, they donated their remaining balance of $500 to the Northborough Trails Committee, and that's still in the coffers, so we're initiating the fund with $500, so.
Very good. Any other questions? Tim?
Thank you for all your efforts on this. I think it's going to be well-received. I know it's early in the process, but do you have any sort of timeline?
I don't. I did
Okay.
request a timeline from DCR, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be design and permitting this winter, and then hopefully construction next construction season,
Yeah.
spring or fall.
Because I already know that's going to be the first question.
Yeah, I did
When's it
ask a
open?
list of questions to DCR that we're awaiting answers on. Do you want me to read those, or?
We don't have to
Okay.
get to that now.
All right.
They're mostly logistic stuff from our standpoint. But, again, we're participating in their program, so we need to comply with how they do it. It's their timeframes. But, again, from the stepping back from the big picture, it's going to be very well received by the community.
And it's an annual, they've asked us to not call it a grant program, it's a fund match. And so they have to expend the funds during fiscal year 2020, and that could be good for us, that we could get things done within that fiscal year. And if it's not done by that fiscal year, they just roll the project into the next year.
That will help with the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And any other questions or comments? Mia, thank you very much. Really appreciate all your work on this, and
Thank you.
look forward to the next step. So,
Thanks, Mia.
thank you.
Before I go,
Yep.
I'm going to plug the Burroughs Loop Trail has their grand opening October 5th, and October 4th is our ribbon cutting, and October 5th is our morning guided hike. We are looking for, if possible, a member of the board to come to the October 4th event and say a few words to represent Northborough. So please consider it.
Motion?
Thank you.
Yes. Do I have a motion? It might be.
Me, yes. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move the board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, to accept funds donated for the purposes of participation in the DCR Matching Fund Partnership Program to fund the construction of a fenced dog park at the Yellock Conservation Area, as well as funding ongoing maintenance efforts following construction, and to allow expenditure of funds for such programs.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor? Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to make a donation to the dog park,
The website should be live tomorrow.
thanks, Mia.
Thanks.
Now past the hour of 7:15, we have Scott Charpentier, DPW Director, informational presentation regarding completed water sewer rate study.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have with us our financial consultant, David Fox from Raftellus. I'll give you a little bio on where we are in the process, what we've considered, what the next steps are. Dave can go into a little more detail on the findings in the study. So we're in the rate study season right now. The process involves end of fiscal year financial data and water consumption information analysis. That analysis presents both the capital funding needs, operational expenditure needs, as well as revenue trends looking backwards and projections going forward. So, this year we did something a little bit different with some of the considerations, and Dave will get into the details of that. The primary focus was on revenue stability. You'll see in your packet, you have a standard cover memorandum that describes the findings of the study itself, and then the third document is a one-page memorandum about revenue stability, and it's a challenge in water utilities in particular. Water consumption decreases every year. It decreases nearly 1% every year, and costs don't decrease. So finding means of revenue stability is critical to water and sewer industries throughout the country. So So the process we've gone forward with is very typical of what we've done in the past. We had 2 informational meetings with the Water Sewer Commission. We have 2 commissioners here. The July 23rd was an initial discussion to go over different rate alternatives and discuss in a little more detail how to obtain some revenue stability in the enterprise funds. The second meeting was also informational, and it was on August 6th. At that meeting, we got into a little more of the details of revenue stability, and we're here now to discuss that further with you guys. And the next step is our public hearing, which was properly advertised and posted, and that's being conducted tomorrow night at the Water Sewer Commissioners meeting. So if you want to get into some of the stabilities and...
Yeah, I wish I wouldn't have shared my talking points with you. You just basically gave my entire presentation. Thanks, Scott. Thank you for having me here this evening. It's been great working with the town. I think this is my 4th or 5th year working with you all on water and sewer rates, so it's obviously great to be back here. A quick overview of just the process that we go through. I'll try to make this brief to not bore you to death. Basically what we do on an annual basis is evaluate all of your revenue requirements for the water and the sewer utilities, looking at things like operating expenses. How much does it cost just to keep the lights on and maintain general operations on an annual basis? Pay for debt service, debt that the town has incurred for the water and the sewer utilities to really extend payments for assets that are going to have a long, useful life. Paying for capital improvements out of cash, so reinvesting into the system to make sure that the town can continue to provide good, clean, safe service to its customers 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, reinvesting into the system. So not only worrying about our operations today, but worrying about them into the future and making sure that we have a good, safe system going forward. Developing all those revenue requirements, understanding how much money needs to be generated for both the water and the sewer funds. And again, not only this fiscal year, but also looking forward. I think one of the best things that this town does that a lot of towns don't do is they're thinking, you're thinking 5 years into the future and thinking about what's coming up this, in fiscal year 20, but what do we think is going to happen in fiscal year 21, 22, 23, 24? Obviously, it's a little gray. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the best thing we can do now is plan for that with the best information we have, rather than just being surprised by something and needing to have a significant rate increase that we could have been paying for or planning for years in advance. So that's one thing we're doing here. One of the things we got into, and Scott mentioned this, was this idea of revenue stability. So a lot of the times when we're talking about our revenue needs, we're just talking about we need an across-the-board rate increase. So we need a 5% rate increase or a 4% rate increase or something like that, and all your rates go up accordingly by that percentage amount. You have 2 components to your water rates, a fixed component and a volumetric component. The volumetric component is based on water consumption, so it depends on how much water customers are using. That fixed component does not change. It doesn't matter how much water a customer is using. They're going to be assessed that fixed charge no matter what. Approximately 8% of your water revenues are coming from fixed charges currently. That means 92% of your water revenues are based on water consumption. Water consumption has been decreasing every single year for the past, as long as I can remember. And there's not really much of an end in sight. It's plateauing some. It's not having as drastic of a reductions as we saw over maybe the last 10 years. This is due to high efficiency fixtures being installed in homes. You can't get a high flow toilet anymore. All toilets are low flow toilets, all dishwashers, washing machines, things like that. There's also just a general awareness of conservation and resource conservation, the right thing to do, a motherhood and apple pie type thing. It's the right thing to do to conserve. So because of that, water consumption's been going down. Now, we are seeing increases in costs. Every water utility is seeing increases in costs across the country. You're not alone in that boat. But even if you weren't seeing any increase in costs, just because your water consumption is decreasing, your revenue base is shrinking, and as such, you would need a rate increase just to keep up with that shrinking revenue base. One way that a utility has, or one thing that a utility has in its toolbox, or a tool that has in its toolbox to be able to mitigate some of the risk associated with a cold, wet spring like we had this spring, or a very wet spring where consumption decreases and in turn your revenue decreases, is by increasing the amount of revenue you have coming from fixed charges. Those fixed charges do not change at all based on the amount of water that customers are using, and as such, it mitigates some of that risk. So again, I'm getting back to currently, you recover about 8% of your revenues from fixed charges. That's pretty low comparatively. In Massachusetts, average is about 15%. Nationwide, the average is about 30%. So lagging a little bit behind here. One of my recommendations was to enhance that revenue stability for the town, and as such, increase the fixed charges more than the volumetric charges. And so our proposal this year, and working through with the Water and Sewer Commission, and Scott obviously, has been to leave the volumetric rates alone, having no increase at all in the volumetric rates, but increasing the fixed charge by about $5 for your typical residential customer. That's $5 per quarter. That amounts to about 5-6 cents per day increase. No increase at all on the volumetric rate. That's obviously going to bring your percentage of revenue from fixed charges from about 8% currently up to about 12%. Now, if I had my way, I'd continue to increase that percentage of revenue coming from fixed charges just so you had that revenue stability. I mean, I think the most important thing for you is to generate the amount of revenue you need to every single year so you can continue providing good, clean, safe service to your customers. You don't want to have that volatility or not as much volatility in your revenues. It'd be nice, towards the end of the fiscal year, Scott and I are not having the conversation, are we going to hit our revenue targets because of consumption? It'd be nice if more of that revenue is coming from fixed charges. So I think this is, if I had my way, it's going to be a continued trend to start increasing that 12% even higher. But we thought this was a good first step to get us to at least start the ball rolling in the right direction of having some revenue stability. On this, that's on the water side again. So we have a $5 increase on the fixed charge, no increase at all on the water volumetric. And with a lot of the uncertainties around the sewer utility, we have decided to not have any increase on the sewer side right now until hopefully we get some resolution with the town of Marlborough and the issues that you are all well aware of there. We've had some significant increases in the past on the sewer side, and it was decided that we should probably wait to see how things play out in that regard.
And one thing to note on the water side with the base charge increase, it equates to about a 4% increase. When you look at the operating costs, on revenue as well as our cost side, our operating costs are going up every year, 2.5%, 2.8%. That doesn't include the revenue loss, 0.75%, maybe 1%. So now we're in a 3.5% window of, level service needed, 3.5% increase. We haven't put a dime into any of the capital. So generally, water sewer utility increases need to be in that 4 or 5% range. They'll fluctuate based on how revenue projections go last year. Can we build up some fund balance, use that toward a capital project and not a borrowing? But those are the numbers. Those are the numbers in the industry, really.
John, you have something you'd like to add?
Sure, just before we get to questions that the board may have, just a couple of points that I would like to make. One is the presentation tonight, the discussion is just informational. This isn't a decision of the board. It's actually a decision of the Water and Sewer Commission through their process. And as Scott mentioned already, they will have an actual public hearing on August 20th. Tomorrow. Which is tomorrow. So if folks have some concerns or they want to go and hear the presentation, that would be the place to do it. The other point that I want to make is, like everything that we do in terms of our financial planning, it has to be realistic. If you keep taxes really low and you do it by not investing in your infrastructure and your roads and taking care of your assets, we all know that stuff will catch up with you. Just like in your personal life, you can save money if you don't maintain your furnace, take your car in for a tune-up, do all the things that you do to maintain your assets. Well, in the larger picture, we have to do those things if we're going to be, if we're going to do things appropriately. And these costs, the capital costs that you heard the director talking about, as you know well, they don't go away. They just get worse and more expensive down the line. So what we do, just like we do on an ongoing basis with roads and our buildings, with our infrastructure, we need to make sure that we have rates that are going to take care of the operational needs, but that we're investing in maintaining the infrastructure as well. It's a package deal. One of the things that I think I pride Northborough on, and I know the staff does as well, is that when we bring financial plans to you, like every year we have to meet and talk about what do we think is a reasonable tax increase, right? And that, to some extent, is arbitrary. It's individual. However, we try to provide the best context that we can to show you what we need to do the job to not just take care of the operating, but to take care of the things that people don't see, the stuff under the ground or behind the walls and things of that nature. So, again, and we do it in a methodical way and using consultants when appropriate, and trying to communicate this to the residents in the boards and committees. And really, that's what the meeting tonight is about, is making sure people know that this process is happening. We're not just making fees up randomly, what feels good. It's based on an analysis, and it's based on a projection over the operating costs, but as well as the capital. And I can't stress that enough, making sure that we're taking care of both aspects. Because if you don't, you're just digging a hole that will cost you more money to fill later. So with that, that's, again, I appreciate, and I know the board does, the analysis and the data. That's what we're making decisions based on. We're not just, arbitrarily picking a fee increase because people will like it. So, thank you for that.
Thanks, John. Any questions from the board? Leslie?
Yeah, first of all, that was an excellent explanation.
Oh, great, thank you.
It was very succinct. It makes sense.
It's all Scott.
Yes, both of you, very.
We trained together.
Practicing all week.
I appreciate that. It's funny, though, there's a little bit of irony here in the sense that, people buy low flow, this and that, but it means that volume is less. But really, we're actually getting less revenue, though, because of that. So they could be paying a little bit more anyway. They're doing something that's environmentally sound, but there could be some dollars associated with it on the other end. So it's kind of an interesting situation, but it does make sense. Yeah, thank you.
Tim?
Just one other thing from the report that you didn't mention that I think is important to bring up too, is that the commercial and industrial fixed charges will be going up too, so it's not only the residents of the town. They're gonna be faced with an increase too, that this cost increase is also gonna be shared by the commercial and industrial.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is going to be shared by the commercial industrial customers. Just to put some numbers to that, again, residential customers will be going up from $10 to $15. Commercial customers will be going from $30 to $45, and industrial customers will be increasing by $45 per quarter to $68 per quarter. So it's not just the residents that are bearing the brunt of this. Yeah.
It's a proportionate increase on their side as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it's all the same, but I think it's just important that
Yep,
the
great point.
burden of this isn't just falling on the residents of town, it's being shared across everybody that uses
Great point.
the water in town.
Thank you, Tim. And just a couple, kind of along that same line, we want to emphasize that for water and sewer, it is the service users who are paying for it. It's not across the entire residential tax base. So it's a smaller population who are funding these services based on their own use of them. Some in the water service, some in sewer, some in both. And so you have to be sensitive to basically the number of people you're affecting with the magnitude of the increase.
We're essentially running two small businesses.
Yes.
Zero profit.
Right.
That's a key
No
point.
loss.
That's a key point. It's zero profit. The fees are just to cover the costs of providing the service.
Right.
And that's why we go through this rate justification process every year.
And one comment about the sewer portion of this. David, I think you mentioned that you're not expecting to apply any rate increase on the sewer side this year. We do have the uncertainty with the Westerly wastewater treatment plant with Marlborough, getting that issue resolved. Could you just fill us in, because up until now, even though there's no rate increase there, we have had some anticipation that there will be costs, and our series of rate increases over these years have been looking forward and anticipating when those are going to hit so that we don't get faced with a large spike. So even though we're not applying a rate increase to the sewer side this year, we have had kind of a succession of increases in the past few years. Is that right?
We've implemented 5 20% rate increases and one 5% rate increase on the sewer fund. every year when we do our model, you know, as always, we have a 10-year look back, a 5-year look forward for the rate study. Every year, we include a 10% increase on Marlboro's use charge. That's currently in litigation. Every year, we include the high and conservative estimate on what the capital cost would be for the $30 million plan upgrade in the operating budget. Obviously, those negotiations are in litigation right now. So those funds are being obtained through our current rate structure and retained. So there is adequate retained earnings to address those bills when and if they come.
Okay, and thus no need for a rate increase on that side of the ledger?
Correct.
For this year at least, yeah, great, thank you. Any other questions? No? I just want to thank our water and sewer commissioners here in attendance tonight, and as John mentioned, hearing tomorrow night at 7 PM, is that?
5:40.
5:40 PM.
5:40.
That's a funny.
Is it at 6 PM? Meeting's at 5:40, okay.
Meeting's at 5:30.
6 PM.
Okay. No, that's fine, that's fine.
Thank you, John.
I'm sorry, through the chair.
Through the chairs.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, guys. Appreciate the information. That brings us to reports. Julianne?
Yes, so first is White Cliffs. White Cliffs met this month and revised the scope of work to be done on the house because the initial proposals came back out of our budget. So basically, right now, we're concentrating on the roof, and we'll wait and see. The next meeting is late in September, and hopefully the proposals will come back more reasonable. Secondly, I attended the CMRPC workshop on recycling, and the underlying message that I took away from that is that people need to have information about how to recycle efficiently. And I have to say that I think it's wonderful that on our website, we have a link under the trash and recycling calendar. We have a link to Recycle Smart, and that is a very helpful link if you have any questions about what's recyclable. Along those lines, I have a question actually, I guess, for John. Do we ever get feedback from our haulers about how our town is doing with our recycling?
Yes, so I'm happy to say we've never had a load rejected. So what happens is, the big issue, and I know I've communicated this to you in the past, the issues with the industry, China getting out of recycling, and the contamination level. And by contamination, I mean people either trying to recycle things that aren't recyclable, or you don't clean out the peanut butter jar when you throw it in the recycling bin. That's considered contamination. The recycling isn't marketable anymore. It becomes trash. And so if that level of contamination is too great, then the recycling facility could reject the load, and it becomes trash, and then we have to pay to haul it to Wheelabrator. I'm happy to say we've never had that, but the industry in general is moving to a much lower level of acceptable contamination. So in order to make our recyclables profitable, we need to reduce our level of contamination. So the state has a program that they're putting out, I think the one that you just mentioned, but we have our recycling haulers. They'll inspect the loads at the curbside, and they will actually put a sticker on it, and you can get rejected at curbside because you have contamination or you're trying to recycle things that aren't recyclable. So there's multiple levels. The hauler is responsible. The recycling plant itself is also responsible. And one of the things that I think you're going to see evolving over the next couple of years is going to be a greater emphasis on education of residents that, that contaminated peanut butter jar could get their load rejected. So at some point, we're not there just yet, but at some point, I would like to look for grants to possibly have somebody going around and doing some spot checks and giving feedback to help people recycle better. One of the biggest sticking points in negotiating our new contract with our hauler was all around recycling, the volatility in the commodities market, as well as contamination. Who is responsible for a contaminated load? I'll spare you the suspense. We are. So it's shared, because the hauler, their guys have responsibility to look at things at the curb. But some folks are using, 96-gallon bins, and if something's buried at the bottom, they're not going to see it at the point of collection. So I think just in general, education is going to be an increasingly more important aspect, and reducing contamination levels is going to be critical to all municipalities being able to effectively market their recycling and not be paying to throw it, to remove it and have it brought to the burn facility. So that's just the nature of where the industry's headed.
So what you're referring to there is the Recycle IQ kit?
Yes.
Yeah, so you think at some point we might want to maybe consider doing that?
Yeah, I've had conversations with the DPW director and the town engineer. We want to engage the recycling committee as well. Like I said, I've been looking for some opportunities to pick up some grants to maybe help offset the cost.
Yeah, I think
What
that,
really, I think, is the long-term approach is trying to do something probably more regional. It'd be great if you had a group that would come into a town and kind of do almost an independent audit, give some feedback to residents about their recycling, that educational component of it. We're not, the city of Newton. We're not going to hire permanent staff to do that, but that's something that we've talked extensively about.
okay, great. And just, school is starting soon, and I'd like to wish everyone a successful and fulfilling academic year. That's it for me.
Thank you, Julianne. Leslie?
Okay, first I'd like to thank the police department for their involvement with the Youth Academy that started on July 16th and went for, is it 2 weeks?
It was just 1 week.
1 week, Joe, okay. I think that's fantastic, and it looks like it's the second, this is the second one.
Yes, it's the second one.
Okay,
That
so it's,
we participated in jointly.
okay, so there had been previous ones that were just
Years
us.
ago.
Yes.
Years ago, we were involved with youth academies that were just in the community.
Yes, okay. And how did this seem to work out comparatively?
This was great as far as the number of kids we had involved, and it brought all three departments together, and so we were able to draw resources from all three. So it was a good experience for not only the kids involved, but for the officers who were involved as well.
Thank you very much. In the report, Officer Mike Bissett, Detective Kevin Fruworth, Officer Kyle Crew, and Detective Sergeant Brian Griffin were being acknowledged for their efforts, and I think that's great that this is done. I'd also like to thank Chief Parenti for this fire report, and also for the posting on Facebook of the incidents by gender, which took me by surprise because I thought men complained more. But it was fascinating to me that.
I'm going to be real careful.
Right?
Thank you, Leslie. Tim?
Just wanted to point that out, but
I
that's
have something to complain about.
That's right. It's an interesting statistic, I thought.
It really is.
Yeah, yeah.
That, and, when we then start crossing age and gender, it gets really interesting, too.
Yes, I'd like to see that, yes. Some more information on it. Very interesting. Thank you very much for both reports, both departments. Thank you very much. I also would like to thank the Community Affairs Committee for their concert series again. I was able to attend the Billy Joel cover band recently, and so nice to sit out there. And they're nice food trucks, and you can just kind of wander around. Everybody's very relaxed, bring their chairs, and the kids are running around. It's a lot of fun and very nicely done. It's really an amazing series that they put together. That's a lot of work. So I would like to acknowledge their efforts. I would also like to mention the Northborough Food Pantry, and once again, to be sure to donate in the summer. I did go on to the nfpantry.org website, though, and noticed that it looks like it's about 3 years out of date. I'm not sure who's responsible for updating that. It has the 10 most important items and so forth, which probably is not going to change a whole lot. But the newsletters seem to stop around 2016, and some other information I think might change. But I think it's a great place for people to go if they want to know what to donate and what's important. So I did want to mention that. And as always, watch out for bikes and pedestrians at crosswalks. And like Julianne, wanted to mention good luck to students, parents, and staff from the start of school on August 28th. So that ends my report.
Tim? Thank you, Leslie.
Let's see, last week I attended a Council on Aging meeting at the Senior Center, and I just wanted to send a big thank you out to the Friends of the Senior Center. They're a group of people that work tirelessly to raise money and put on events at the Senior Center. It serves two purposes. It allows the Senior Center to have great events for the seniors, but I also think it gives the town the advantage of having almost like a test run as they pay for things to see if it's worth funding. So I think it serves a number of purposes, and I know how tirelessly they work to make sure those programs get funded. So I just wanted to say thank you to that group of people. Thank you, Chief, for the fire report. One comment on the police report, the new cruiser. I thought it was interesting that it was ordered in August last year, and it just came in this year. And I think that's another important aspect of why the town plans financially the way they do. If you waited till those cars broke down, you would have to wait 12 months before you had another one, and then the town would be short one cruiser for that period of time. So I think it's, again, a good indicator of the capital expenditures that the town makes for those sorts of things. And then on the youth program at the police department, somebody was telling me that a woman I know, she lives in Sudbury, and they do that for adults. And I want to be a police officer for a couple weeks, so.
They won't give you a gun, I tried.
As long as I get a badge, and I could scare my kids, that's really the. And again, much like Julianne and Leslie have stated, the new school year is starting next year. One thing I would ask everybody in town to be aware of, new school year means the buses are gonna be back out on the roads. The kids are gonna be crossing the streets, kids are gonna be walking. Everybody who's been cruising through town for the last couple months with complete disregard for buses and kids walking to school. So starting next week, please keep your eyes open for buses making stops, stop signs on the buses, and kids in crosswalks. Distracted driving is an issue not only here but all over the place. So just be mindful of the kids being back in school. That ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Dawn?
Well, this week, or last week, the Applefest Committee announced that Grand Marshal would be Joanne Sharp, and I think that it's a well-deserved honor. Joanne was a selectman. She served on the county commissioner, as a county commissioner. She served on the Worcester County Retirement Board, probably best known for tipping over a bus at the corner of Bartlett Street, having it tipped over so that the town finally got a light there. That light at Bartlett Street is due to Joanne Sharp's efforts, and Mr. Ritchie, who donated his bus to be tipped over. So they made a great choice, and I would just like to congratulate Joanne. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Don. I'll just add my congratulations to Joanne as well. She's been a long-time contributor to the community, and this is certainly a very well-deserved honor. I just also like to mention thanks to Steve and Arlene Marshall for the donation of a musical play structure down at Ellsworth McAfee Park, which is in memory of their son Chris, who passed away unexpectedly a few years back. Chris was a music lover, and they thought that this would be an appropriate gesture to provide some enjoyment for the kids who are playing at the park. There will be a formal dedication ceremony, I think, later in the year, perhaps October, if I'm not mistaken. But for now, the play structure is up, and it's a lot of fun. I walked down there. A lot of it's percussion-based. You've got pipes and xylophone types of equipment and everything. And after a few minutes, they kind of had to pry me away so the little kids could play with it. So just a very, very nice gesture, and something certainly that the community is going to use and appreciate for years to come. So I just want to thank Steve and Arlene one more time. And that concludes my report. John?
Just one quick update. We did send out something through the town news today, and the Department of Public Health has been issuing a number of warnings out to folks that EEE is in our area, not in Northborough specifically, not that it's been tested yet, but there are 12 communities in central Mass that have been deemed to be high or critical risk. Northborough is one of the 5 that's deemed to be high risk. Millbury, Sutton, Marlborough, and Framingham are in that group. There are 7 communities that are critical risk right now. That's Shrewsbury, Westboro, Southborough, Grafton, Northbridge, Upton, and Hopkinton. Triple E is something that runs cyclically. This is a disease carried by mosquitoes. There's information on the town's websites, there's information on the Department of Public Health's website, but it runs cyclically. It tends to run on, according to DPH, about every 3-year cycle or so. Kim Foster and myself were on a conference call with the Department of Public Health today, about 3 o'clock, and just going over where they stand. So it's something that we continue to monitor, they continue to monitor. There is some spraying that is occurring, and there is some contemplated aerial spraying in areas that, once they become critical, DPH may be moving forward to do some aerial spraying. So these aren't decisions that the town of Northborough, Westboro, Southborough is involved in. These are being handled at the state level between DPH and MDAR in terms of the spraying. But it's just, the point of this is just to remind folks that it is an issue out there right now. It hasn't, we haven't had any positive tests in Northborough, but obviously it's in the area, so use caution. Again, on the website, avoid dusk and dawn, use bug spray, be careful with older folks and younger folks that may have compromised or immature immune systems, and just use common sense. It is going to call into question down the road, and I'm not prepared to get into a discussion about it this evening, but any town-sponsored events that are occurring at dusk, we're going to need to start to give some serious thought to. So I've had conversations with the superintendent today. The health agent is working on this, but it's in the area, and really it's just a matter of time. Last time this hit us was in 2012, if you remember. So we've had a few years off. Again, it tends to be cyclical. Having trouble talking today. Kim, was 2016 a year that was an issue? I can't remember. I remember 2012 being the one that was very significant. So it's coming. If you haven't heard about it, you will. All the information that we have is up on the website now, and we'll continue to update that as we get more information from the state. So I just want folks to be aware.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
That brings us to public comments. Anybody care to offer a public comment? Hearing none. New business. Item number 1, amendment to the June 17, 2019 meeting minutes. So this is an item, recall that for the June 17, 2019 meeting of the Board of Selectmen, we had a segment of our meeting, which was a joint meeting with the Planning Board to interview applicants for appointment to the vacated position on the Planning Board. During that process, we interviewed 3 applicants, and then the boards engaged in some deliberation. And following that meeting, the Board of Selectmen produced their minutes for that meeting. There was a particular item in the minutes that the Planning Board brought to our attention as being inaccurate, both of the board's deliberation and their comment on one of the candidates during that. So what we have here is a correction to that statement in the minutes of June 17, which now states, more generally, board members and Mr. Blanchett agreed that better communication between the Planning Board and ZBA, that's Zoning Board of Appeals, would benefit both boards. There had been some discussion when Brad Blanchett, who's the chairman of the ZBA, he was one of the candidates for appointment to the Planning Board. During the discussion, there was some commentary about that communication, more communication between the Planning Board and the ZBA would be helpful, because the ZBA is, for the most part, interpreting appeals based on current zoning bylaws, and based on their experience, some feedback to the Planning Board would be helpful for the Planning Board to proceed with any potential revisions to the bylaws if they find certain provisions are not working or unused or in some sense contradictory to actual practice. So based on that discussion, we had an inaccurate characterization of the planning board's comments during their deliberation, and we're making the correction here to address that. So, any questions or comments from the board? Leslie?
Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to actually go back and listen to the meeting again. And I'm not prepared to revise our minutes based on what could be an interpretation. I would like the minutes to reflect what was said.
Well,
To be honest, I don't recall, what I don't recall was a discussion where the parties came to an agreement on something. That, I don't remember it being that way. I don't know if I would characterize it that way. Maybe it came out, I don't know, maybe it
Well-
did come out that way, but I guess I don't, minutes need to be a reflection on what was said, not an interpretation of what was said.
well, to the extent the minutes summarize discussion, as has been commonly mentioned, our minutes are not a transcript of the proceeding with verbatim statements attributed to each speaker. We generally tend to summarize our minutes. In this particular instance, I did review that portion of the meeting. I agreed with the planning board's assessment that our minutes were inaccurate, and this is actually my draft text for the replacement, to say to the effect that that portion of the discussion basically was an agreement or an acknowledgement between Mr. Blanchett and the planning board members that some additional communication between the boards would be beneficial. So we can certainly defer this if you feel you would prefer to go and review.
I would be more comfortable with that. I would like to go back and look at that part of the meeting. Because I think, now we're getting to splitting hairs and looking back over minutes of our board. And, one certainly sounds nicer than the other.
Well,
I just want to make sure that it's accurate if we're going to be changing.
and I can certainly state that the original text was certainly inaccurate in its characterization. And so I certainly would want to address that and make the correction. If you prefer to defer and review and propose some different or what you feel is more accurate text for this portion, I'm fine with that. But it certainly is the case that the original statement was not accurate.
Yeah, again, this could be perfect wording. I just did not have a chance to go back and look at it,
And
which I
that's-
would like to
that's fine.
do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would like to do, so that would be my stance at this point.
Okay. Any other comments?
So
think that-
are you suggesting we table it?
Yes.
That's fine. We'll defer to the next regularly scheduled selectmen's meeting. And in the interim, you'll review the video.
Yes,
and-
yeah.
and
I will do that.
adjust. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. The date of that meeting, let's see, June, what was the date of that?
That was
meeting?
June 17th.
June 17 replay then, okay. Thank you.
Next item, interview subcommittee, recommendation for appointment to the White Cliffs Committee. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to appoint Diana Nicholas to the White Cliffs Committee until such time that the White Cliffs Committee is disbanded by vote of the Board of Selectmen, as recommended by the interview subcommittee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, Julian?
Yes, so I understand why you have recommended Diana Nicholas. She has an amazingly impressive CV and is experienced in all the processes, municipal processes that the White Cliffs Committee would need. But that being said, Ms. Mazzelli comes with a different skill set. She comes with marketing experience, mold remediation. She has attended classes in landscape architecture. And as far as I can remember, she has attended almost every single White Cliffs Committee meeting. So as I was thinking about this decision that we have to make tonight, there's two things that I'd like us all to think about. One is that we have an architect on the White Cliffs Committee already. we have hired a very reputable architectural firm to assist us through this process. My question to myself is, do we need a third? Or do we need a different skill set? And finally, the last point that I want to make is Ms. Nicholas serves on design review. She serves on master plan steering committee. Ms. Mazzelli does not serve on any committee, and I'd like to indicate to our residents that we would like to broaden our representation on all of our committees. So these are some things that I was hoping you would think about.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll add a comment. I was present for the interviews myself, and while I appreciate Ms. Maselli's interest and her concerns about the White Cliffs, let me just say, it doesn't automatically follow to me that someone who attends a lot of meetings is automatically qualified to participate in the business of the committee. I'm not saying Ms. Maselli is unqualified. I'm saying that alone isn't something that necessarily, it indicates interest. It doesn't necessarily indicate someone is the best qualified person for the job. We've had a lot of concerns expressed about White Cliffs. It is essentially an architectural and historical preservation project, and Ms. Nicholas, by far, is the most professionally qualified to serve in this capacity while we go through this phase. The fact that we have two architects rather than one architect on the board, to me, I think is an advantage in bringing those professional skill sets to this particular project. I don't have any reservations about this, and as I say, I certainly appreciate Ms. Maselli's interest and concerns, but between these two candidates, I feel very comfortable in choosing to support Ms. Nicholas, and I feel her qualifications will serve this committee and this town very, very well. Any other comments? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Thank you very much. Next item, request from Central Mass Grown to change the date of their one-day special license for an event to be held at Tugas Farm, located at 234 Ball Street. This item, this is just John, if you...
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to it. So they appeared before the Board of Selectmen at your July 15th meeting where you approved their event. They've since reached out and they've had some scheduling changes, so they would like to change the date from the previously approved date of August 11th to the newly requested date of September 8th. Everything else stays the same. The program stays the same. The conditions are the same. They just would like to change the date.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move the board vote to approve the request by Mackenzie May of Central Mass Grown to change the date of their one-day special liquor license for an event to be held on the grounds of Tugas Farm at 234 Ball Street from the previously approved date of August 11th, 2019 to the newly requested date of September 8th, 2019 between 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. with the following conditions. 1, the license shall include the 24-hour period immediately before and after the event in order to allow for the proper delivery and disposal of all alcoholic beverages prior to and immediately following the event. 2, guests shall have identification on their person and must be 21 years of age or older. 3, proper signage and barriers shall be in place, notifying guests that alcohol must be contained to the marked event area only. 4, satisfactory inspections shall be performed prior to the start of the event by the fire, building, and health departments.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you very much. And Diane, you'll be notifying them of the approval of the license? Great. Thank you. Next item, set meeting schedule for September through December for the Board of Selectmen. We have a selection of dates here. Normally, the board meets on the second and fourth Tuesdays.
Mondays.
I'm sorry, second and fourth Mondays.
I'd love for you to meet on Tuesdays. That'd be much more convenient.
Confusing with my liaison schedule. Second and fourth Mondays of the month, and for here we have September 9th and 23rd, October 14th and 28th, November 11th and 25th, and December 9th and 23rd. Those would be the second and fourth Mondays of the month. However, for October, the first meeting date, October 14th, is Columbus Day, and so the proposal is to just have one meeting in October on the 21st, rather than either of the other two dates. In November, November 11th, is Veterans Day observance, and so instead of meeting on the 11th, we will meet 1 week earlier on November 4th and we'll shift both meetings earlier 1 week for the first and third Mondays of the month of November, 4th and 18th. So the meeting dates will be the 9th and 23rd of September, 21st October, 4th and 18th of November, and I see we're moving forward. Oh, I'm sorry, I take it back. We have 2 dates in December, 12th and 16th. 12th is our typical joint meeting date for financial trend monitoring report, and then December 16th, well in advance of the holiday.
Correct.
So,
Similar schedule that we keep each year.
right. Any questions, any discussion? Julianne?
So are we going to meet with Planning Board about the master plan presentation? And would that be on, when do you think that?
There hasn't been anything decided. If there was to be a meeting date that would align with one of our dates, we might do that, or it might be a separate date apart from our schedule shown here.
Okay.
There hasn't been anything planned, so there's nothing here for regular meetings to introduce that. At some point over the course of the next few months, there will be informational presentations, there will be a public hearing by the planning board. So when those are actually scheduled, then we'll entertain, or we'll figure out what's happening with our meeting schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I move the board vote to set the meeting schedule for September through December as follows: September 9th and 23rd, October 21st, November 4th and 18th, December 12th, financial trend monitoring report presentation, and December 16th.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Item number 5, we have a transfer of cemetery deed A992 and execution of cemetery deeds 1081, 1082, and 1083.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to approve the transfer of cemetery deed A992.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Julian?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to execute cemetery deeds 1081, 1082, and 1083.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Julianne, you're in favor of that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay. Any other business to come before the board?
Just the need for a brief executive session.
Okay, our next item will be executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Subsection 3, Collective Bargaining, re Patrol Officers Union, and Litigation, re SA Farms. Due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, Subsection 3, Collective Bargaining, RE Patrol Officers Union, and Litigation, SA Farms Update, due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding these matters in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is voice. Julian?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The board will return from executive session only to adjourn open session. Thank you.